Hello to you, my friends. As always, I hope you are doing super well. This is Adam here at The Fallback, and today what I wanted to talk about is 3 different ways in which you can silently record professional sounding guitar, all in the comfort of your own home. Now, right off the bat, I will make a quick note that these aren't necessarily new concepts as such. I know that they are covered to an extent across the wide range of this thing called the internet, but what I'm aiming to do here in this specific video is compare these 3 different methods of recording in a kind of pros and cons scenario. So if you are relatively new to audio production, or say you're in a band and you want to DIY record some demos or tracks, then hopefully this will be the video for you. So to quickly clarify our terms, when we say silent recording, we of course don't mean that in an absolute literal sense. What we are of course actually referring to is recording guitars at a practical volume level. So you could be wearing a set of headphones while you record, or you could be using your studio monitors, but one way or another, things will be at a volume where you're not going to either annoy your neighbors or the people that you live with. Now, the first method we'll go over here is using what we call software amp simulators. Now, these are a very nifty development of the modern age because there's no external hardware required to generate your amplified sound. As the name suggests, you're going to be downloading some form of software, most usually a software plugin, and that just goes straight into your digital audio workstation of choice. So for recording purposes, your guitar will basically run straight into your audio interface, into a track in your DAW, and on that track sits your software amp sim, where all the amplification and cabinet emulation all happens inside the box. Now, these are particularly great if you're just starting out in audio production because they're generally speaking really easy to set up and start using, and in addition will come with a whole bunch of different presets for you so you can start jumping through some sounds and see what you like in pretty much no time at all. Now, another big plus if you're just starting out is that software plugins are usually the most cost-effective way to start recording your own guitars. From what I've seen on the market, you're looking at $200 or less, and you can go under $100 depending on your particular budget and of course which amp sims you actually like. And on that note, a lot of them tend to come with some form of free trial as well, so you can sign up for that, chuck it straight into your DAW and have a mess around for say 14 days or whatever they offer you, so you can really make an informed decision before you lay your money down. Yet another positive with recording this way is that because you're recording directly into your DAW, you won't need to re-record anything if you don't end up liking the guitar sound that you've dialed in. In a more traditional recording setup where you've got an amplifier set up in a room and it's making lots of noise, you'll dial in your sound of choice, record your part, and then you'll go and mix it later. But if you end up finding that the particular guitar sound doesn't sound great in the mix or what have you, you'll need to change the amp sounds and re-record all your parts again. The software amp sim configuration is probably the easiest way in which you can change your guitar amp sound after the fact. So if you've absolutely nailed your guitar part, then you can spend as much time as you like after the fact changing your amps and cabs and mics, if that's an option as well, to really make sure that your guitar sound fits really nicely in your mix. Now, the only real cons with doing it this way is that I've personally found that software amp sims can be a little bit fiddly, so you tend to need to spend a little bit more time really getting sounds that you like out of them. And another potential negative, which may just be down to my personal experience, is that software amp sims don't seem to play super nice with real life guitar pedals. So if you do have some of those lying around and planned on using them, you may not have the most fantastic experience. So some brands you might want to explore in this space are, for example, Scuffham amplification, which I personally use. There's Bias, there's Fortin, there's GuitarRig, and there's a whole bunch of others if you do a little bit of Googling. So your next option for silent guitar recording, I guess in the context of this video, we'll call a hardware amp sim. So what I mean by that is you'll actually have an external piece of hardware that your guitar plugs into. That piece of hardware is doing your amp and cab and microphone simulation, and then that runs into your audio interface where the signal is recorded. Another way I guess you could sort of think about it is it's in a sense a hybrid between a software amp sim and an actual real tube or valve amp, in the sense where you're physically plugging your guitar into this other piece of kit, and you might have some knobs and dials where you change the sound, but the amplification itself is of course digital. Now, this is probably a more expensive way to go about recording your own guitars, though that being said, it does come with a whole range of other benefits. So you are usually going to find that your hardware amp sim of choice comes with a whole stack of different amp, cab, mic, and even effect simulators all in this one box, which of course means you should have a really wide array of different sounds at your disposal. And if you are going to go down this path, you can think of it as almost a replacement purchase for a real-life amplifier, or in fact, several real-life amplifiers. Because if you do like the sounds of a particular hardware amp sim, you should find that it's more than suitable to use in a live application. Whether that means you're running the amp sim into a cabinet first or running it directly into a PA, that plethora of amps and cabs and whatnot that you have available in the studio all become available to you when you're playing shows. And yet another positive, well at least in my experience, is that if you do have physical guitar pedals that you like to use, you should find that hardware amp sims play a lot nicer with them. Now I do in fact own one such hardware amp sim just behind me here. It's called the Avid 11 rack, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend at this point in time because it's a bit of an old dog in this particular field. To my ears, it does sound pretty nice, but there are some relatively big players in this space at this point in time. For example, the AxeFx, the Kemper Profiling amp, or the Line 6 Helix. Your third option for silent recording will really appeal to you if you already happen to own a real-life tube or valve amp. Specifically, what I'm referring to here is usually called a reactive load box, and essentially what that allows you to do is silently record the sound of your real-life amplifier, run that straight into your audio interface without blowing anything up. Without going into too much technical detail, a tube amplifier needs to be plugged into a speaker cabinet in order to function correctly. If you were for any reason to unplug the amp from the cabinet and switch it on, you were inevitably going to find that you've done a whole bunch of damage to it. Now, a reactive load box, which you'll often find paired with terminology like speaker simulator or speaker attenuator, replaces the cabinet's function in the amp cab configuration. So you take your amplifier, you bypass your speaker cabinet, and you run it into the reactive load box. From there, your reactive load box runs into your interface where the signal is recorded. So at this point, you'd be likely to find that the sound of your amplifier without a paired cabinet sounds relatively ordinary. But that being said, a reactive load box should usually come paired with what's called an impulse response. Now, I know that sounds kind of daunting, but fret not, because more often than not, you should find that the reactive load box that you've purchased comes paired with software that does this job for you. In my specific case, I use the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor, which when I purchased it came with the wall of sound plugin. Similar to the software amp sims we spoke about earlier, you'll have a piece of software that plugs into your DAW of choice. However, in this specific case, it's in a sense tonally playing the role of your speaker cabinet in a room. The wall of sound plugin is particularly fantastic because it essentially comes with an array of different cabinet choices, different microphones, and in different physical spaces as well. And you can move the microphones around, blend different microphone signals, and do all sorts of cool stuff as though you're in a proper real studio with physical microphones and all that cool stuff. Now, I suppose the benefits with this option are relatively straightforward, but nevertheless, let's go over them really quickly. The most obvious one, of course, is that if you already own a real-life amplifier, then this is a fantastic choice for you. Not least of which because you'll be working with gear that you're already quite familiar with. Of course, if you have guitar pedals, you can run them into the amplifier as per normal operation, and you should find you're working within some relatively familiar sounds right off the bat. Now, price ranges do vary a reasonable amount in the world of reactive load boxes. The aforementioned Torpedo Captor is quite a cost-effective way to get into this particular game. Some of the really high-end reactive load boxes are ones like the 2 Notes Torpedo Studio or Live, or the Universal Audio OxBox. But if you're taking your audio production really seriously and simply don't have the space or the tolerant neighbors to be able to set up loud speaker cabinets, then this could be a really worthwhile investment for you. And that does it for today, my friends. I do hope you managed to derive something of value out of this video. I know I didn't go into full technical detail when it comes to each of these 3 recording methods, but I'd be more than happy to do so via separate videos. So if that's something you'd be interested in, make sure to leave a comment down below. If you had any other thoughts, comments, or questions, of course, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Catch you later!